So when I first started gardening in this garden, which is now 22 years ago, I didn't know a lot about gardening. I didn't know a lot about plants that you put in the ground. I was really into container gardening, but that's where most of my experience was. But what I did know was that I wanted an Annabelle hydrangea because I saw them in other gardens. I knew what they were, and I knew I wanted that. And I knew I wanted it in this exact spot. So this is the corner, this is the northwest corner of our house here. So you can get an idea of where we're at. And this is where I planted a single Annabelle hydrangea. Yes, that was all one. And as we walk around the corner here, you will see that this extends well beyond the corner over here, all the way over to here. Now, I think most gardeners who like hydrangeas probably love or at least admire Annabelle hydrangea. But I also think that most gardeners probably get frustrated with Annabelle because it is prone to flopping. Now, let's be clear, there are reasons that hydrangeas flop, and that pertains to all hydrangeas. And that can be where they're sited, if you don't have them in enough sun. It can be if you over-fertilize them and you push out a whole bunch of soft new growth. It can be a watering issue. It can be a pruning issue. But all those things taken into account, even when you do all those things right, Annabelle gets a little floppy. I don't actually mind the flopping so much, but I don't like it when the stems actually break. So I don't mind that for years now, this hydrangea has, done this and kind of bent over the grass to the point where there actually is no grass growing around that corner anymore. But what I don't love is this. When these blooms get so heavy that the stems actually break. You can also see that there is a significant amount of deer browse here, which probably had something to do with breaking some of those stems. So there are ways you can deal with Annabelle. A lot of people put in a grid system. Some people put like a hedge of boxwood or something in front of them to help support them. These are all really good ideas. But if I could grow a plant that looks as beautiful as Annabelle, but I don't need to do any of those things I don't need to find ways to stake it up or support it through some sort of structure or plant a hedge in front of it. If I could plant a plant that looks as good as Annabelle that didn't need those things, then maybe that's the right thing to do. So that's why today is a bit of an end of an era here, because these Annabelles are coming out. I've thought on and off about taking these Annabelles off for about 10 years now. And now it's finally happening. So the difference this year for me as to why this is happening now when it hasn't been happening for the decade that I've been thinking about it is twofold. But it starts with a question that somebody asked on a video a month or two ago. And that question was about a hydrangea that is much beloved by many people, but was not performing well in her situation. And she felt like she had it in the right spot and she just didn't like it. My advice to this person was, there's no reason in this day and age with all these hydrangeas out there to put up with a hydrangea that does not perform for you in a way that you like. Find something else. So I started thinking about this, and then I started thinking, well, what if I found the something else for this? What is my reason for not doing this? Nostalgia? I mean, it is an important plant to me, right? Like this is one of those plants that started my gardening journey. So yeah, I have feelings for her, right? But there's something better out there. So why am I putting up with something that I don't absolutely love? So that's how one comment led to what we're going to do today, which is pulling out this hydrangea. So we're going to clean this out. And when I say we, I mean mostly Mr. Much More Patient, because I think this is going to be terrible to dig. But before I do that, I'm going to pick my very last Annabelle hydrangea bouquet. Well, it's been a few days and things look much different. Check it out. What an enormous difference this is here, with this whole side of this garden just gone when it's been Annabelle hydrangeas for years. So Mr. Much More Patient came in with a chainsaw, cut everything down, and then dug out the roots. And there were big roots in there, especially in the areas where it had layered. Because remember, I only planted one Annabelle here, and over the years it's spread by layering itself. By the way, you can do this yourself too, just by laying down a branch and sticking like a stone on it so that it makes contact with the soil, and you too can have essentially a hedge of Annabelle hydrangeas. Hopefully you can kind of see the line, the bed line I've made. Everything outside of that is where the grass has died because the Annabelles were flopping over the grass. So once I get done planting here, we will come in and we're gonna plant grass along this edge to try to get some grass growing here again. I also pulled out in this area right here, there was a ligularia that should never have been there in the first place. So I pulled that out. I'm gonna put that somewhere else in the garden. And then there was some sweet woodruff, so I just dug that out. There's one little really sad sanguisorba left back here. I mean, there's this one. There's one really sad one back there. Maybe now that it'll get a little bit of sun, it'll actually grow. And I'm gonna try to make this bed a little bit more cohesive and match from side to side, other than, of course, where the hydrangeas are, because we're not going to put hydrangeas on this end. I've got a really nice weigela on that corner, plus there's some peonies here. So I don't need symmetry. I just want balance, basically. So I will plant a little something in this corner here, but let me take you around to the other side to show you what the other side of this bed looks like. Okay, so ignore how filthy our house is. It is on the agenda to wash the house, and this is the north side. And it's terrible, so just ignore that for the moment. But of course, this is coming, so like I said, this is the north side of the house here. Now, what I did was I kind of extended the bed a little bit and then eased that edge a little bit just to make lawn mowing a little bit easier. I know this is a little bit ugly on this side of the house over here. I don't really spend a lot of time looking at this side of the house, and neither does anyone else. So I don't really have any plans to ever plant anything along the foundation. I just feel like planting things along a north side foundation, unless you really need it, I just feel like it's gonna be more work than it's worth. So you can see what we're left with for a bed here, and hopefully you can kind of see where I've tried to make a trench. The soil is actually in pretty good shape over here, but kind of loose, so it was hard to dig like a true edge over there. So the edge will have to be sort of determined by where the mulch stops, basically. So I actually had spent a lot of time devising a method for staking up my Annabelles using sort of a cage situation that I was gonna do next spring. And then I went to this trip to Bailey Nurseries at the beginning of August, which was a wonderful thing that they flew us out there so we could see everything that they were doing there. And kind of their big introduction for next year is Flowerfull Hydrangea, and that's what this guy is right here. And Flowerful is absolutely meant to be an improvement on Annabelle. So among the things they bred for in Flowerful were stiffer stems, because that is what we all want. They also bred for more flowers and better disease resistance. Although I have to say, I don't ever remember a situation where I've had a disease issue on Annabelle, but that was also part of the breeding of this plant. Now listen, I think it's good to be skeptical of new plants. I think, you know, before you go ripping out an entire corner of plants on your property, you probably want to have a certain amount of faith in a plant that you're going to be replacing it with. Well, fortunately, since I was able to go there and see it in person, see how they grow it, I saw all the photos of their trial fields where they trial it against Annabelle itself, and then other Annabelle competitors, or plants that were bred to be improvements on Annabelle, I should say. So when I saw those pictures, I'm like, oh wow, there might be onto something here. And then I got to lay my eyes on the plants itself, and for better or for worse, I thought, you know what, this is it. So I thought, when a plant that comes along that is as beautiful as Annabelle and does all the same things that Annabelle does that I love about it, but not the one thing that I really hate, which is the flopping, like, why wouldn't I do it? So I was very fortunate to have Bailey's and First Editions, because this is a First Editions plant, send me some of these Flowerful hydrangeas before they are out on the market next year, so that I can plant these and grow these and tell you all about them. So let me tell you more about Flowerful. So it is a hydrangea arborescens, just like Annabelle is, which is also known as a smooth hydrangea. Hardy in zones 3 to 8. Size is 3 to 4 feet high and 4 to 5 feet wide, which tracks with my, you know, what I think of the size of Annabelle. So size-wise, to me, that seems the same. And then exposure is full sun to part shade, and like most plants, if you are on the southern part of the growing range for the plant, it's usually a good idea to give it some afternoon protection from the sun, because the sun is just hotter. Up here in my zone 5B, 6A, the sun isn't that hot. It's not really a factor for us, so we have a little bit more latitude in terms of where it goes. Actually, before I lay those plants out, I'm going to put in some Organic Mechanics biochar blend. So like I said, I am going to leave a little bit of space over here to fill that in. So I think we'll start. And I'm going to aim for planting these in the middle of the bed so that we don't run into the grass problem again as they get bigger. So I think you can see I'm just trying to center them in the bed, and I did put this one around the corner. This will be a really good test to see how it performs in less sun, because as you can tell, you know, obviously there is less sun right there for that one. So we'll see how that one grows. It'll be interesting to see how that works. Actually, the Annabelle stretched around the corner, and there was no perceivable difference between how the ones that were over there did and the ones over here. So I think I'm pretty happy with that spacing. Maybe I will pull them out just a touch more. And then I figure if this is gonna get 4 feet wide, that would be 2 feet from where that can is. So there's still, you know, plenty of room here. And I figure, you know, good balance is achieved if I can plant something basically like up to the edge of that window. So the soil on this property is always a bit of a surprise when you dig somewhere, because the native soil is mostly, I mean, sandy loam. Some spots are very sandy. But then there are other places where clearly there was fill brought in, or when they built the house, there was, maybe there's, you know, some, they got down to a clay layer and some of that got dug up. So a lot of times around the house, it's kind of this odd mix of sand, sandy loam, and then like chunks of clay on occasion, which is not necessarily a bad mix. It's just always interesting. So here I'm finding this to be kind of that. I'm also finding a lot of hydrangea roots in here. So just a note on watering. What you saw me do here is my preferred way to plant shrubs, trees, whatever. I will dig a hole, put the plant in the hole, fill up the hole with water, then I'll backfill with soil. Then I put the hose on just a very, like, above a trickle basically, and let it sit on the root ball of the plant while I work on the next one. And then I come back, give everything another round of water, just to make sure everything's settled in, so we don't have to, in case we have to re-backfill any soil or anything like that. Okay, here we are all mulched. Obviously the grass situation has not been dealt with yet, but the mulch helps us figure out where the grass is supposed to go. It is pretty wild to see how far over those hydrangeas were hanging. Now the number one thing that I need to do to make sure that these are successful is stay on top of watering. So I have learned over and over and over again that the number one thing you can do for your plants before you go into winter is get them going into winter well hydrated, which means, you know, pulling hoses out anytime the ground isn't frozen and when you still can to water things, especially newly planted things. So I'm going to be on my best watering behavior and water these guys thoroughly, make sure they are really, really in good shape as we go into winter, and that will definitely help them survive whatever winter is going to throw at us this year and hopefully thrive for the future. So let's take note of the height of these right now at planting. It's just below where the siding starts. So let's see how fast these will grow. I'm crossing my fingers that it's quickly. So there is one question that I'm guessing you might be asking yourself, and I have asked myself. Would I be doing this if First Editions hadn't sent me these plants? And I think it's a really good question because it's a big step to pull out a mature shrub that's in your garden that is performing okay for a plant that you don't exactly know how it's going to perform, but is very similar. I think probably the answer is yes, and here's why. Because first of all, you guys know that I love experimenting in the garden, but also because, let's be honest, Annabelle's never going anywhere. You will always be able to get an Annabelle hydrangea. So if all else fails and I ended up hating these, I could always get Annabelles again. And smooth hydrangeas do grow really pretty quickly for the most part. I mean, certainly it varies from variety to variety, but generally speaking, they move pretty quickly. So it wouldn't be that big of a deal, right? Anyway, we are considering this a sort of an experiment. How fast will these grow? Will they do what they are supposed to do? Or should I say, will they not do what they're not supposed to do, which is flop? So if you want to make sure that you are here to see what these look like come spring and beyond, and if they live up to their Flowerful promise, make sure you subscribe, stay tuned and watch along, and we will all find out together. All right, have a great day in your garden. Thanks for watching. Talk to you soon. And it was a person who was growing a hydrangea that a lot of people love and a lot of people have sex with.